Hello, everybody. Good morning, and at least from where I'm broadcasting from in Arizona. And what is it, evening, midday for you? What's the time zone?
Here in Spain,
Yeah,
it is like 5 p.m.
there we go. So I would like to welcome a very special guest. This is our first episode of World Venture in Review for 2025, and we have Chelsi Johnson from Spain.
Hey,
Chelsi, just
everybody.
hey. So just Chelsi, give a very brief introduction of yourself, and then we'll unpack that later through the interview process.
Sure. So my name is Chelsi Johnson, and I am a missionary here in Spain, in Madrid, and been here for almost 3 years now, which is crazy. And I work with kiddos in a community center called the Friendship House here, originally from Arizona. So it's a little bit chillier here. That's all I will say.
I don't know. I'm up north, so we're 2 hours. I'm two
Okay.
hours from Phoenix, so we're kind of chilly a little bit today too.
Okay, like what's your temperature is my question.
Let's see. Checking my computer a bit. It's not telling me, but let's just say that it was throwing ice last night, and it was
Okay. All right. All right. I can't beat that. But it was down in the teens last night,
wow,
so it's pretty
awesome.
chilly.
Yeah. So, just to let everyone know, to remind everyone that if you're joining us on our social media channels that allow for chats such as Facebook and YouTube, I'd like to invite you to participate in the conversation. This is not just a conversation between me and Chelsi, it's between Chelsi, me, and you. So, if you have some questions, put them in the chat. Don't worry about whether or not that we've moved past the subject matter. We will pivot, go back to it. We will get to your question. But I want to thank you for joining us either on the website and on our social chat. So thank you, everyone. So let's start with some fun questions, Chelsi. I'm really
All
curious
right, let's go.
because I've heard that, Spain is one of those tourist destinations I've heard. And I was wondering, and I know we laugh when I say, you're going to laugh when I say day off because us global workers, we tend to, what's that, but
Yeah.
there's got to be some downtime somewhere. So, what is your favorite place to hang out in Spain when you have a day off, and why?
To hang out in Spain when I have a day off or two, um, is a city called Valladolid. If you were gonna make it like sound really English, Valladolid, Valladolid. I don't know. Um, But I lived there my first year here in Spain, and I have friends there, a lot of friends there, and lots of memories there. And the city is very fun to me. So I know the good places to go and get a good cup of coffee, to go get a good tapa, all those kinds of things. So when I can, I like to escape up there and spend time with friends and enjoy the time just sitting in the plaza with a cup of coffee, you know.
That sounds heavenly.
I'm not gonna lie, the coffee in Spain is something else. I Every time I've gone back to the States, I'm like, it's not the same. It's not the same. Spanish coffee's better.
How is
People
it
will argue.
stronger, weak, stronger, flavorful? What is it?
I th- I think there's like a freshness to it, but also like maybe a little bit sweeter. It has a different taste to it. I think when I read something about it the other day, it was like they grind and roast, or they roast the coffee beans a lot of places in some sugar, so it adds a little bit of sweetness to the coffee. It's very interesting.
Hmm. Oh, that is interesting.
But coffee here is like espresso, basically. Like you go to a place to get coffee, they literally grind it and do it right there, and you watch them do it in the little espresso machine, and you get your little bit of milk that goes in it, and café con leche. That's where it's at.
Are they cups or is it the little tiny cups I've seen in a documentary?
They're Yeah, so tiny cups are more Italian and Cuban.
Okay.
So in Spain, like their cups are like they're not like the big like Starbucks mugs,
Yeah.
like we're not talking quite that much, but like decent size. Sometimes they'll be in like a tall, like skinny glass. Other times it'll be in like a normal little like teacup or coffee cup.
Awesome.
So
Awesome.
yeah.
So we're going to get into a little more and get to know Chelsi a little more personally. I'm Chelsi. You mentioned on your profile that you, at the age of 5, you became a believer. So, but oftentimes, as I've heard a youth pastor say more than once, at some point, your faith, you learn to have your faith become your own.
Mm,
When did that
mm.
happen? That happened.
Yeah, like I said, I was saved at the age of 5. I also grew up in a Christian home, going to a Christian school, a church school. We went to the same place for school as church. And I don't really feel like I ever really grew very much. So I was very much a baby Christian for many years, even though I memorized scripture and did all the stuff, walked the walk, talked the talk kind of thing. I didn't really ever make it my own until probably like my last year in college. And I even went to a Bible college.
Wow.
So it was kind of one of those things where it's like you're just living the life you're used to living and you do the things, but you don't really think too much about it. And it was kind of like that last year, God just kind of was really working on me and pushing me. And it was the start. It was the start of something new, as said in the song from High School Musical, in case different context, but still applies.
You gonna sing it for us today, or?
No, we are not going to sing High School Musical, even though I would very much like to.
Awesome. So tell me about your first missions trip overseas and how it deeply impacted you.
So my first missions trip was actually to Peru. Um, and I was 19 years old, so many years ago now. And I was definitely a baby, just graduated high school, getting ready to go to college. We actually went to Peru like 2 weeks before I was going to college, which was kind of crazy. Um, and the entire time I was there, which was a little over a week, we did lots of things, but one of the things that stuck out to me was the lady, her name was Rachel. She was a single missionary lady. And I was like, huh, so you don't have to be married to be a missionary.
Oh, wow.
Huh. Light bulb, bling. Even though it didn't really go any further than that. Like, it was kind of like, huh, I think I'm supposed to be like doing ministry things. I don't really know what this means. I really don't know what it means, but I do think it means I need to, continue doing what God's asking me to do. So I spent the time sitting there thinking, like, what am I going to do? I changed my majors around, ended up changing my major to office administration to be able to use it in whatever, which I still sort of regret, but it's fine. But yeah, that's really how it impacted me, was being able to see like, oh, like I could do that. I could do that anywhere, but I could do that, It was kind of like the little starting of the little seed that God was planting. And I didn't know anything more than that, So yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So tell us in detail now what you do with WorldVenture in detail. We had the introduction, the simple introduction, but now I want some details.
Yeah, so I work in a community center called the Friendship House, which is a community-based outreach to majority North Africans, but others within our little neighborhood here in Madrid. And we use Spanish classes for ladies and men. We also have a clothing closet, which we have a program that we are working on kind of refining a little bit with that, but it's basically called a ropero, where people can come and get free clothing, household items, different things like that. I'm also the director of the kids program at the center. And our kids program is called Iramas. And it is it's an after school help program. I wouldn't call it homework help, because we're not really helping them with homework. We do when we need to, but we really more teach like particular classes and that go along with what they're already learning in school. All of that to help prevent school failure. And I can talk a little bit more about that later, but yeah, so a lot of different things that happen within our little community center. And all of these things have a purpose, and that purpose is to really build relationship, build bridges of understanding, um, that help us, that really provide opportunities for us in the future to have spiritual conversations, to open doors spiritually with the people that we're working with. And that can be very difficult. It's not easy by any means. But it's definitely needed, and you can see it, and it's definitely a really cool thing to be able to have the opportunity to do here in Madrid. So, and then on Sundays, our community center transforms into a church. um, and so not only is my role within the community center working there during the week, but then on Sundays, I'm very heavily involved in our little church plant that meets there. So yeah, a lot of everything.
That's kind of typical sometimes, is you go for one thing and you go and it turns out to be many different avenues of reach out.
Yeah.
Um, Thank you, but I'm sorry if I butcher your name a little bit. I know you're from India. I think you're from India, if I remember you correctly. Valuri, welcome. I hope you have get something out of this today.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you, Valerie.
yep. So you've been in Spain since about 2022, and I had the pleasure of
Mhm.
following your journey since you are a Zoni. We're sisters in Christ and from the same state.
Arizonians, as they say.
Yeah. So, following your journey has been a pleasure to see how you've
Hmm.
grown, how you have just, you've embraced every challenge, including COVID. Um, delays and going, and you worked so hard to build your financial team. I mean, just way to go on that. But hindsight is 2020, they say. So, what advice would you tell the Chelsea who went on her first mission trip now that you've been serving the last couple of years in Spain?
Oof. I thinking about this question. It was kind of one of those things like 19-year-old Chelsea was a very different Chelsea. But probably one of the things that I would say would be, I do wish that I would have taken continued my major in education. I think even though what I did was very helpful to me and it continues to be, I think it would have been an extra benefit practically. Um, I think mentally, spiritually, those kinds of things. Um, I think I would have said pay attention more. Um, take your faith on sooner rather than later. Because what would those 3-4 years have done as far as making a difference in how I grow as Christian? So yeah, I think that's probably what it would be.
Yeah,
So
awesome answer. So tell me, if someone is interested in serving in Spain, what advice would you share with them now that you've been there for a couple of years?
hmm. I think it definitely really depends on what that person is going to be doing in Spain, because we have a lot of different ministries that happen in Spain in general. I think for what I do, I think maybe one of the things would have been, all right, learn Spanish earlier so that you can then have time to now learn Moroccan, Arabic. Um, we are kind of moving in that direction of, how do we figure those things out? But it would have been nice to have some of those, roots already and continue doing that. As far as somebody who's just like going to Spain in general, learn about Spain, learn about history. I think one of the things that was interesting for me was I was sitting in Spanish classes, and all these different people come to where I was learning Spanish from different countries around Europe or different places around the world. And so many of them had so much more understanding of history than I did. and and I will say I think part of that is like an issue with the school system in the US sometimes, but I do wish I would have had a better understanding of history of art. I mean, things that maybe Europeans take more into account than we do as Americans. Um, but it's like you kind of have a hard time. I had to write like this paper in Spanish about this um, painter, and I was like, I don't know. I don't even know anything about this person. And everybody else was like, oh, he did this and oh, he did that and they did this. And I was like, cool for you.
Oops.
Yeah. Just some of those things. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else. It also depends on what kind of food you like to eat. Um, a lot of fish is eaten here, a lot of olives. If you're not an olive fan, maybe don't come. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. um, I don't know. It really just kind of depends. But I have a texture problem with food. So like some food I've really had to like work on getting used to eating. I can finally eat like cooked tuna now from a can that they usually eat here because they eat it all the time. And it took me forever to get used to it. It was so frustrating. But
Awesome. So tell me about, let's see, someone, if most people who have spent time in raising up a financial team would say God taught them some amazing things during their time of waiting. During your time of support raising, what did God teach you as you waited to serve overseas?
Ooh. So it took me almost 5 years to raise my support team. And I would say it probably most likely took longer because of the pandemic. So definitely took way longer than it probably should have. But you know, what is the verse in the Bible that says like God equips those he calls? He doesn't call the equipped. So like
Yep.
it's really very much that of like I realized probably like halfway through those 5 years like, oh, so like the time I have here isn't just for me to raise support and talk to people and find people who are coming and partnering along with me. No, it's time that I have that I get to spend getting tools to take with me. And I think that made a big like impact in how I kind of viewed the entire like partner development process of no, it's not just getting people to come along with you. It's really equipping yourself as well, in that time to go and do what God's asking you to do. Now, granted, you're not going to get there and be like totally equipped for everything because there's no way. There's no way. No, but seriously, like having the mindset of that God's going to be working on those things in you and really providing the people in the path for you. I think probably one of the biggest things for me was I saw God putting specific people to teach me specific things in my path. Some of them are still there. Some of them are not there anymore. And, it was very much a God thing. But I think that was probably the biggest thing he taught me was like, I got you. Don't worry about it. Because worrying is a big deal. Like you're a missionary getting ready to go to the field and you're like, I need like a $200 more a month. Where is it going to come from? I have no idea. And you just sit there and go, like it is a bit of anxiety. I mean, it is. I mean, it's part of the learning process, but at the same time, it's like you sit there and you're like, all right, God, like you're the one sending me. You got this. You're sending me. You got this, and someone comes out from somewhere that you knew somebody from 40 years ago, I'm being silly, but like, or different connections or different people, like God's the one who does it. And so it's like, once I realized that, like came to that realization of like, oh, I'm doing the work, but he's the one that's figuring it out. It was like, oh, okay. It was fine. There were definitely a lot of ups and downs for sure. And a lot of other things, but that's really kind of like the small, tiny piece of it,
And I think that's what most people miss when they, because a lot of times, a lot of our response, a lot of people's responses, and I will admit my response was the same when I was first thinking about it. But a lot of responses from our audience is like, oh, I have to support raise. Like I told somebody else recently. support raising, when you're a global worker, and you're serving God, it's
Hmm.
like you're seeing God act in ways you wouldn't have had you not taking those risks.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And oof, man, you know what's funny is I totally remember sitting in church when I was little and looking around whenever missionaries would come to the church, looking at them going, I'm never gonna do that.
yeah.
And God sat there and went, sure. You try that and see how that goes for you.
my my
Yep.
my warped sense of humor imagines him just sitting there and going,
Mm-hmm.
got some plans for
Me
you.
too. Yeah.
So awesome. So let's dig a little deeper into the kids program, because if I remember correctly, you had a post or something way back, how you were excited about starting the program and all that. So just unpack it. Tell us about this kids program, especially the fact that I believe you started it.
No, so the program at the center's been going for
Okay,
11 years,
11 years.
if I'm
Okay,
not mistaken. How how it has transformed over the years is a very different story.
awesome.
Um, my colleagues, Dan and Ava, were the ones who actually started the community center of the Friendship House.
Yeah,
And as the years have gone by, obviously they've had to mold and change and shift things around, and that it happens every year. Um, but there became more and more kids. There became more of a need that Dan began to see of what they needed and where the shortcomings were, where they were failing, where things weren't going so well. And so as time went on, here we are, 11 years later. Uh, 2 years ago was kind of me in a lot of ways taking over the reins, as I had been in Spain at that point for a year or a little over a year, and had learned Spanish and was able to speak in Spanish. And so it was like, okay, Chelsea, like, I'm going to give you the reins. We've sat and talked about this, but like, I'm here. And I mean, he still is. Um, but it was one of those things where I had always had in my mind of like, my role really here was to come and support Dan and Ava, but also help with the kids program, because that's really where I felt like my calling was. And that's kind of what has happened, but in different ways. Like, you come to the field and you always think like, this is what I thought it was going to be, but it's different. you know
yes.
um some of the pieces of it are still the same, but the pandemic drastically changed how things worked here in the center. And it changed how many people we were able to serve. It really made Dan and Ava take a step back and say, okay, we got to start kind of figuring out how to restructure some of these things with smaller groups of people. We can't have as many anymore, that kind of thing. And what we learned from that was we're actually able to have a better impact with smaller groups of people instead of large groups. So when I came to the Friendship House to visit for the first time back in 2016, the program looked very different. It was kids running everywhere, activities. We were trying to talk to them in English, but it was like we were really just, captivating them with activities, because they were still, Dan was still trying to figure out, what do I do with the kiddos, and, that kind of thing. And he's done an amazing job. I mean, like I said, I didn't start the program. He and Ava did, and they've done an amazing job. And I get to come alongside them and say, okay, how do we restructure this? How do we do this? How do we really help better meet the objective that we're trying to meet, which we've seen now is really helping prevent school failure, helping them do better in school. Well, how do we do that? We teach classes. And so it went from being activities to now to just English. And now we actually help them in math, Spanish as a language subject, which is called lengua here in Spain, and English. So mates, lengua, and inglés. Those three things. So math, English, and Spanish as a language. Um, and so I get to help prepare those things for the kiddos, and for our volunteer teachers. Um, I prepare all the lessons and do all those things, which is why I say I kind of wish, like, looking back, I could have gotten, like, an educational degree. Even though I have a ton of experience working with kids in an education and doing those things, it's not quite the same as having some of those kinds of tools. But God still uses you
Yep.
as you are. And what I did learn is very helpful in college. In the end, I do use it all the time. So there you go. Some people don't use their degrees, but in the end, I've been able to use mine a ton. So, um, but our kiddos, we have first graders through sixth grade that come normally, and then this year I was actually able to start a class for 5-year-olds. And for our 5-year-olds through our second graders, we do like sort of a Montessori style learning class time. So we have stations for them set up, and we split them into small groups, and we kind of like walk them through that. So we actually really don't, during an hour, we probably don't have more than 12 or 13 kids there during the hour, if we have that many. That's kind of like the limit. This year in our program, we have about 55 kiddos. Due to unfortunate things this year, we have less help, so we had to have a few less kids. That doesn't mean anything bad. It just means you pivot and change and move on and figure out what that looks like and restructure your program to open those doors for those things. And God did open doors for other things. So yeah, we love helping our kiddos. We help them in those subjects, and by doing that, I take it back to, we're helping kind of bridge those gaps of misunderstandings, both in language, but also for them having a good education and being able to actually do well in school and then later in their futures is a way that we help bridge some of those gaps of understanding. So, it all falls in line with the main objective, but in the day-to-day things, it's like, okay, math, English, Spanish, So yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. You talked about in your last newsletter praying and pivoting, which are very familiar words in everybody's work. Um, you had a few less days during the week meant you could open up the new class, which you just talked about, for 5-year-olds and have a Bible club. So tell us specifically about those and how that benefits.
Yeah. So last year, our schedule was every afternoon, Monday through Thursday. We had what's called Iramas, which is like our after school program. And last year, we actually worked with kids from first grade all the way up to like, I think it would be like we would call in the States like 7th graders, 8th graders, somewhere around there. We found by the time that they had already reached like that last point in like 7th and 8th grade, they've kind of gone beyond. If we haven't been able to help them at that point, like something's not working. So we're like, we need to pivot and figure out how do we help the little ones get the tools that they need to actually do better in those earlier years. And so, with not being able to provide 4 days of classes, we had to sit and say, okay, what do we do? Well, how do we utilize our volunteer base better? We have, people who want to help with like more of a Bible club kind of thing, as opposed to like an everyday school sort of situation. And so we were like, okay, well, what if we launched a Bible club? And it was something, I think that was a dream of Dan's for a while. And I was beginning to feel that as well, of like, I feel like we need to do something like that. I feel like God's opening the door for something like that. And he was. So we did. So we created a littles class to start with little ones. Hi, Charlene.
Welcome, Charlene.
So yeah, we started a class with our little 5-year-olds. We tried to do it last year and there just wasn't interest in it. And like, for whatever reason this year, the moms were like, here's our child. I will present you with my 5-year-old for an hour. But the little ones are having so much fun, and I'm seeing progress. Like, I'm seeing them figure things out and manipulate things and getting some of those tools that they really need to do well in elementary school. Because they're in what's called like what would be technically preschool in the States, probably up until they're in first grade. So when they get to first grade, then they go into primary school. Um, and so we were like, oh yes, this is awesome. We got the little ones. We're seeing it work. I'm excited about and they're so faithful in coming. Like they want to come. They're excited, and we love that. We get to love on them and give them hugs. And, the little ones are always like more loving. And then like you reach 6th grade and they're like, whatever, profe, like we're here because mom said we had to be here, kind of thing. It's definitely a big difference. But we love all of them, so and then our what happened was then we had this like extra time where we were like, okay, what do we do with this extra time? We have this extra like afternoon or whatever that we can use. And we're like, okay, well, we've been talking about this. What if we just do the Bible thing, the Bible program? And we were like, we don't even know who's going to show up. We were like, we don't even know if anyone was going to show up, because what we did know is probably most of the North African families wouldn't let their kids come. Maybe we didn't know, what we did know is we had to be very open about what it was. And it really is it's a Bible club where we learn about a certain character from the Bible, or person, I should say. I don't like saying character, but
Yeah, no, I get
it's
it.
kind of that, but not really. I don't know. Anyway, so person from the Bible. So the first one that we had a short-term team here, actually, from my sending church, Palmcroft Church in Phoenix, Arizona, and they came and they helped us launch the program. We're like, well, if they're gonna come, let's do it. We're just gonna do it.
Awesome.
And so we were like, we don't know what's gonna happen, but we're gonna do it. And God knows what's gonna happen. And in the end, we had 6 kids come the first day. Wow. And all of them were kids that have come to our afternoon programs. And they had a lot of fun. We learned about Jonah. And the team did a good job of creating activities and things around that. And so, just be praying for us. We're still trying to figure it out. We're trying to figure out what each time looks like, but we meet about once a month. Our next one is actually going to be in February. So this last time we had 9 kids come. So each time I feel like we're adding like one more kid or something. I don't know. That's kind of how it feels. But we have kiddos all the way from 5 years old up through 6th grade that come. Awesome. So kind of that same age group as like the after school program, but a totally different program. So yeah, it's exciting to see what God's doing in it. We're excited about it. So.
And if everyone has heard that, just mark it in your little prayer books or write it down. That's a prayer point to pray for. It would greatly encourage us if you'd like to write out a prayer in the chat. If you feel bold enough, go right ahead. But meanwhile, we're talking about short-term teams. You mentioned Palmcroft, but in your newsletter, I mean, you've had some, and I'm sure it's not just in the last newsletter, but in other ones too. You've had some answer to prayers where partner churches have helped things, either programs or supplies. So
yeah,
expand on that a little bit.
Yeah. So I'm going to give an example of our desks. So we had these. I wish I had a picture of them. I could show it to you guys because they were special. They were desks that were the place where we are is what used to be an old school.
Oh.
And the desks were actually donated from a different school 11 years ago.
Wow.
So they were donations that were already used from way back in the day. And they were these like ugly green desks. They weren't even like, they were like a pastel green color.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And at the time we had like light blue walls. So it was kind of like this like weird, like green, light blue wall situation happening. There was, it was all in love. We but we loved our little place, but
right?
Yeah, you use what you got. But the desks were just worn out. I mean, there were corners that like chunks had come off, they'd been drawn on. Some of them had like a hole in the middle of it. Kids are being kids, and many years ago, Dan had to ban them bringing gum into the classroom because they would take the gum, and stick it like underneath the desk. And it's not just kids that are using the desks, it's adults too, during the day. And so it's like, come on, you guys, like, take care of the stuff. But anyway, and we had one old whiteboard and two blackboards. So we were still using chalk blackboards, which we could never seem to find like a good brand of chalk here. So it was like every time you go to write on the board, it would like write like a little tiny bit, and then it would just be like, like the scratching on the board sound. It was like, and it wouldn't show up very well at all. So it was really frustrating, and it threw a lot of dust in the air. Chalk is very dusty.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were just like, oh, it would be so nice to have all new whiteboards that were magnetic, so that we could like put magnetic things on them and use them for learning. And Palmcroft actually, during their Easter service last year, took an offering for us, Palmcroft Church in Phoenix, and that offering was for us to buy new desks and new whiteboards for our center. And so we were able to do that, and they're awesome. They're so nice. They're so much nicer looking. They're like a wood looking top. And hi, Shauna.
I love her, Shauna.
Shauna knows what I'm talking about, because she's been here with a team, a few teams, so she knows exactly the desk that I was talking about. But yeah, no, it's a huge blessing. And we actually, as our church has been growing, we actually needed to buy more of our chairs that we have. And so with that money, we were actually also able to buy some more chairs to have for our church as well. So that's been really nice. And another church of mine up in Minnesota, yeah, for sure, don't you know? All you out there know what I'm talking about if you're from Minnesota. I grew up in Minnesota, so that's why I think it's funny. But no, the church, my church in Rochester, Minnesota, there at Calvary Baptist Church, they raised money. Their kids, actually, the majority, but some of the parents were chipping in as well. They had a penny drive during their VBS this last year, and they collected money towards being able to buy tablets for our kids program, which, having technology in the classroom is like a whole brand new thing for us. So it has been super exciting. The kids love it. They're always like, when do we get to play with the tablets? So I get to use it now as like a tool of being like, well, if you do this part of your homework, no, I'm just kidding. But sort of, kind of.
Yeah.
But no, we actually have programs that we've downloaded to them that are actually learning programs. Some of them would probably be very familiar to people in school, because one of them is a Spanish version of a program that Northwest Christian Christian Academy. Oh goodness, sorry guys. In Phoenix, they use this particular program, and so it was actually really it's a math program, and the kids actually really like it. So yeah. So we love that. We love that we get to do that. We have 3 of them. It's not like we have that many. So we have small groups, and they get to take turns. So yeah, it's been a blessing.
So on that note, with the church plant, tell me a bit about that. Because that's a recent thing, I believe.
So the church plant, so the church started literally the month before the pandemic.
Wow.
And because of the pandemic, they had to stop meeting. So because they had kind of just started, they really they were, I think, doing like some messaging and that kind of thing, like in between people, but it didn't really start back up until like the following year. So like 2021. And then at that point, they were meeting every other Sunday, and then like every other Friday night. So like a Bible study every other Friday, and then like church every other Sunday.
Okay.
And they reached the point where we're like, no, we want to like be like a church, like we want to have services every Sunday. They started doing that the year that I actually arrived, so like in 2022. So when I arrived, they were starting to then start meeting more often. And now they meet every Sunday. The church has been growing. I mean, the church, I think probably with the people that started, probably maybe like 30-ish people. And for our Christmas service, which was a whole nother thing, but we had about 65 people. um, so it's been really exciting to see what God's doing. We've had within the last year about 6 people get baptized. One of those is 2 of those people were a couple that started actually coming. The lady, we'll call her L. Elle actually started coming to Ava's classes during the day at the community center, and she was like, I want, like, this is interesting, I want to go to the church or whatever. So she started going to the church, and she then started like really just God was working in her and opening her heart, and she became a Christian, and then was starting to invite her husband to come with her to church. So Elle, and then his, we'll call him P for and so L and P started coming to church, and it was really cool because you just started to see a change in them. Like you could visibly see the change. I mean, I was living in Valladolid at the time, but every time I would come and visit, because I would come and visit once a month, like you could just see like there was a change happening, like a progression, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And then it was like like within the last year and a half, they were like, we want to get baptized. And we were like, wait, you guys are like Christians. Like it was so cool. It was really cool. It was really cool. And it was really cool to hear their profession of faith, and just the change in them, the visible change in them. You know, like sometimes you don't get to see that as much, but it was like you saw like from the people who they were back, like 2 years ago to the people who they are now, 360, 180. I don't know, but it's like however, 180. Like what I mean to say, like a total complete change.
Yeah.
Um, and it's cool. It's cool to see what God's doing. And then last summer we had 4 of our young people get baptized. Some of our younger university students who have been coming to the church, or going to a church since they've been little. And it was kind of them like being like, we want to profess our faith. And they had a lot of friends come from the university who aren't Christians.
Mm-hmm.
We ended up having that baptism at like the mother church of our church plant in like further into Madrid. And that church fits like probably maximum 200 people. And we filled up the church that day. And that wasn't even a day of normal church. Okay. So we're talking all these people that these university students had invited that were there, that probably the majority of them were not Christians.
Praise the Lord.
And they were sitting there like watching their friends get baptized and like testify to their faith. And these kids are like 19, 20, 21, and it's like, wow. And that's a big deal in Spain. I mean, that's like the context in Spain is not that at all. Like the context is very much like it's not a Christian country by any means. They claim to be a Catholic country, but in reality, no one really goes to mass. The only people who go to mass are like the older people. The younger generation, they don't want to have anything to do with it, So it was a big deal. It was a big deal that day. And it was so emotional because I was standing there. I got to help lead worship. And so we were singing one of these songs that like I've learned from like the first couple weeks of living in Spain, like a worship song. And it just meant so much more in that moment of like, this is so cool. Like I was like trying to like combat tears, and like it was warm on the stage. So it was like you were sweating a little bit. And so like you were like crying because you were sweating because the sweat was like going to your eyes, but like also like you were emotional. Man, but it like that moment was so cool because you just looked out and you could hear all these people singing these songs, and the majority of them like weren't Christians, and they were sitting here singing these songs, and it's like, whoa, So there's been some really cool whoa moments like that in our little church plant, and it's exciting.
Awesome.
So
Want to share a couple more whoa, maybe one more whoa moment?
yeah, I can share another whoa moment. So I sort of mentioned it a little bit, but we this year decided as a church to do more outreach within our little neighborhood, which is the same neighborhood where the Friendship House is located.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, what are we gonna do? Well, like the mother, I call it the mother church. It's kind of funny, but like the main church that's like oversees our church plant,
Mhm.
they usually go out every year and sing Christmas carols in a neighborhood. They like choose a neighborhood and they go out and do it. And our people in our church, like our like guiding board of our church, they were like, well, why don't we do that? They're like, we have David and Chelsi, and they can play the guitar and like lead the choir, and we can go sing. And David and I, like hearing, we were voluntold. We love it, but we were voluntold. But it's all good. It's all good. But we were like, okay, what are we gonna do? So we kind of like gathered some others around us, and the church helped pick like which Christmas carols we were gonna sing. And there's some funniness to it, but there's some really cool things of like we sang this one song that is like a really like very well known Spanish Christmas carol, and I do not like it. And if anybody wants to look it up, it's called Chiquiriquitín. I'm not going to spell it because I'm not.
Curious.
But
Why don't you like it?
be, first of all, because it's a very hard word to say. And second of all, because just the tune of the song is just silly. Okay. Like it's a really cute song, but it's like cutesy. It's like, it's like, it's not super worshipful. It's more cutesy.
Okay.
So we go out and we decide we're going to go out into the neighborhood. And what was really cool about this was that Ava and I have a Bible study class on Wednesdays with several of the older Spanish ladies from our neighborhood. And Ava and I and Dan, we were like, well, it'd be really cool to get them involved. And Ava was really pushing for it too. And we were like, yeah, yeah. Actually, they're in the picture that you have down there of me.
Yes, the QR
That group of ladies.
Yeah.
And they were like, it'd be really cool if they could come and sing with us, and they all were like super excited about it. So they came with our church family, and there was probably like 45 of us, 40 of us there all together. And we went out into like one of the main plaza areas, like one of the main squares here in our little neighborhood. And we started playing. David and I were playing our guitars and, leading this group of people, singing. And we had a couple of other people walking around actually handing out little like flyers that we had made to invite them to like our special Christmas service. And so that's why I think it's really cool, because that Sunday we had 65 people at our service, which were normally about 40-ish.
Wow.
And so it was pretty cool. And some of the ladies that come to the Bible study that sang with us, they came to church service, which they'd never come to a church service. So it was cool. It was really cool. What God's doing something here in this neighborhood, and we're along for the ride for sure.
Awesome. So tell me, on that note, are there opportunities if people who are watching are interested in serving either short term or long term that you can think of at the top of your head?
Yeah. Probably one of the biggest things, which would be really cool, is if we could have some interns come out and spend some time with us, or even people who want to spend like a short-term team is cool. What's interesting about interns is that they're actually able to be here for a longer amount of time. So they actually get to help us with a little bit more than a short-term team does. There's nothing wrong with either thing. But one spends more time than the other, So it would be really cool if we could have some interns come out, and honestly, it's helping with our kids program. Dan and I are still pretty much kind of some of the main ones that are there every single day because we don't have enough help this year. And I would really like to see Dan be able to do some of the other things that God is putting on his plate, and not be so overwhelmed, not overwhelmed, but um, be able to really focus more on those things. And so I would love to be able to see and pray in the future to have, some help in that. If it's a person, coming as an intern, if it's a person coming for a couple of years, if it's a short-term team coming and helping us out, if it's someone being like, I want to do long-term missions in the Friendship House in Spain, um, yeah, all of the above.
Awesome. So if any of you hear that, I mean, I know Grand Canyon University has a program with Friendship House or whatnot. You can look into your Grand Canyon University people over there. But you can also go to worldventure.com/go and talk. You'll have to fill out a form. It doesn't mean you're committing to anything, but it does allow you to be queued to talk to somebody about what you'd like to help with and learn more. So worldventure.com/go. So on that, so just out of curiosity, what's your support at right now?
I would say my support is at about 96%.
Awesome. Yeah, you're doing good work
So,
there. God's providing.
um, God has been awesome in doing that. And he keeps doing it. So yeah. So it's been really awesome to see just the faithfulness of God's people, and thank you, thank you, thank you. I don't think we can say thank you enough, um, to those people, to my partners, and even those who give, one-time special gifts. And um, we are partners. I'm here as a representation of that. It's not a one person thing. So
Yeah, your partners are serving as well, just in a different capacity. So,
mm,
tell me, so we're getting close to the end of our time. If you have questions out there, now's the time to really quickly put them in. Otherwise, how can people pray for you personally and professionally?
sure. Personally, I am a single person. I live in a house by myself. I do not live with roommates, as a choice.
Don't
And
blame you.
I'm okay with that choice, just so we know. um, but in our little church plant, there is not anyone my age. We have university students who are like 19, 20, 21, and we have people who are older than 50. And then there's Chelsi, they're in the middle somewhere. um so, really kind of one of the remaining pieces, like really like root pieces for me here, is finding like a friend group of people my age.
Mm.
And I actually joined the Coro Gospel de Madrid, which is the gospel choir of Madrid, which has a ton of people my age, and we get to sing together. And I feel like God is really opening up a community of people there, and so I just continue to pray for doors to be opened, in that. That's more of like the personal level.
Yeah.
Um, Professional level, I think just continuing to pray for guidance for us at the Friendship House as we continue to take steps forward and figuring out how to reach even further outside of our little neighborhood here, and reach more people, and and serve and love on more people. So, wisdom and direction in that.
All right, everyone out there, you have those prayer requests, so be praying, and you can scan the QR code or click on the link earlier in the chat, and you'll be able to learn more about her and see her prior past articles or live streams we've done with her in the past. But if you do like to learn more about her, you can private message us your email and name, and I can forward all that information on to Chelsi, and then she can be in contact with you. So Chelsi, I want to thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, for sure.
These were awesome stories. Don't forget to stay on when we're done with the live. These were awesome stories, and lots of things to praise God about. So thank you for coming on. Just as a note to everybody else out there, a little housekeeping here. So as you notice, this month we've been praying for children. Oddly enough, we have Chelsi on as we're interviewing. That's not a coincidence. But we've been praying for children all month. So if you would like to get those prayer prompts, you just have to follow or like our social media pages. And they come up 5 a.m. Arizona time every single morning. So that would be 6 a.m. on Central Standard Time. Also share them with your friends, and the more people that can pray, the better. And these prayer requests also help Chelsi. So because she works with children. So our next live stream is January 24th at 6 a.m. Central Standard Time, which I know is really early, but we are having a special guest and we have to work around their schedule because it's from Japan, and it's a believer from Japan who will join the Swensons. So you were invited to come and join and ask questions, and that will be January 24th at 6 a.m. Central Standard Time. So thank you everyone for joining us today. If you're watching this after it's live, we will still find answers to your questions if you have them. So thank you everyone. Have a good one.